Hey y'all, welcome to Sandy's Library. I'm Sandy, and in this video, we're going to talk about my great-grandfather Willie's second marriage to Jessie Walters Mobley. These are old family tales about my grandmother's people, so if you need visuals, there are links posted in the description outlining both of my grandparents' family trees. Okay, so after Willie's attempt to marry Mary Miles never came to fruition, he got serious and went up to the Ears Baptist Church on a Sunday in May of 1909. And let's be real, y'all. Willie went up there for one reason and one reason only. He certainly wasn't looking for a new church. And the thing that I find curious about the whole deal is, did Willie know there was a widow in attendance? Or was he just hoping he'd find one there? But anyway, in a nutshell, Willie goes to the church on a Sunday in May of 1909 where he meets a local widow named Jessie Walters Mobley. Everybody called her Jessie. And as the story goes, Willie and Jessie hashed out a marriage contract that very afternoon and were married the next day. But it was probably more like 2 days, since it's a fact that they married on May 19th, which fell on a Wednesday, according to the Google. And that's 1909. Maybe if our half-cousin hadn't been so fixated on trying to convince us all that Willie and Jessie fell instantly and madly in love, he might have crunched a few numbers and found out that his great-grandmother married his great-grandfather on a Wednesday, not a Monday. But anyway, I've always heard that they met on a Sunday, drew up a marriage contract that afternoon, and married a couple of days later. And you know, I'm willing to bet that their marriage contract was a well-thought-out arrangement, and I would love to know the particulars. Our half-cousin says that not much is known about Jessie's marriage to John H. Mobley, beyond that he died probably in 1908 of pneumonia or tuberculosis. Well, we do know that she and John had 4 children. Also, I found a marriage record from Lincoln Parish, Louisiana, that states Jessie Walters married J.H. Mobley on January 19, 1898. So, we do actually know that much. And y'all, it's also rumored that Jessie shot and killed a black man who was said to have been peering in through the window. And this part, y'all, is very important. Our half-cousin says that Jessie knew it was old Jasper when she pulled the trigger. To me, y'all, that says a lot about her character. And I'm sure, y'all, that there's a story here, but it's one that's better suited to her descendants. So, I'm going to leave that to them. But anyway, when Willie married Jessie, she and John's 4 children had been living with her parents in Eris. Jessie and John's children were Serene, age 10, James, age 7, Aubrey, age 4, and Mamie, age 1. And for clarity's sake, Aubrey was a boy. It's interesting to note that Serene refused to move to the Williams household with her mother. Instead, she stayed with her grandparents. My guess is that she probably saw her mother's marriage to Willie as a betrayal to her father. I mean, you know, kids don't understand about real world shit, you know. But then again, maybe she already knew what her mother was. The mistreatment of my grandmother and her siblings started almost immediately after Jessie and her children moved to the Williams farm. My grandmother's younger sisters, Sally and Allie, were ages 5 and 3, respectively, when Willie married Jessie. When they tried to call her Mama, Jessie responded with, "Don't call me Mama. I'm not your mother." All I can say, y'all, is what a cruel thing to say to small children who don't have a mother anymore. And y'all, my grandmother used to tell me about how Jessie was so mean to her that Sissy would run off into the woods where she'd hide for hours crying. And we'll talk more about that experience for my grandmother when we get to her video. Because y'all, I do have videos planned for each one of the children. But I'm going to wrap up Willie's story before we get into those videos. And y'all, there's tons more to tell about Willie. Oh yeah. But anyway, our half-cousin states that Jessie's descendants describe her as a friendly person. Yes, as we can see by her treatment of her stepchildren. I'm still wondering when she acquired the friendly part, because by the time Jessie was dying in 1920, every single one of her children had abandoned her, beyond my grandmother's 2 younger half-siblings who were too young to take care of themselves, much less their mother. And you know, witchcraft wasn't confined to just my family either. According to our half-cousin, he says, and I quote, Jessie, like others of her generation, possessed a mysterious and mystical ability. Now, yeah, I have no idea what he means by others of her generation. Was the practice of witchcraft running rampant in the late 1800s and very early 1900s? I mean, I don't remember studying that in school. Nevertheless, he goes on to say, through some unknown means, she was able to heal a baby of thrash. And y'all, he spells it Thrash. So yeah, I googled thrash, but there doesn't seem to be such a thing. Not as an illness or disease, anyway. There is, however, an illness called thrush, which is probably what our half-cousin was trying to say. Nevertheless, our half-cousin's account of Jessie's miraculous healing abilities involved privacy. Just Jessie and the child, alone, in a room together, where she is said to have, I bet you can guess. Yep, she chanted. So, over the course of my childhood, I recall all of the Williams girls, including Aunt Elsie, who is Jessie's daughter, talk about how mean Jessie was. So, it doesn't surprise me that they were all anxious to get out of the house. As soon as Jessie moved in, it seems Aunt Julie Bell moved out, marrying Jessie Lee Grider a few months after Willie married Jessie. And Aunt Ida, her first marriage in 1911 was to a man who had 0 scruples. But we'll get to that in a later video. And my grandmother married my grandfather in January of 1916. And one old family tale that Sissy used to discuss with her sisters, Julia Bell, Sally, and Elsie, about Willie and Jessie goes a little something like this. One Sunday, Willie had gone to a big dinner at Marion and Belle Fuller's house and would not take Jessie or any of the children with him. And remember, y'all, Marion and Belle Fuller are Lizzie's parents. And because this tale involves my grandmother as a married woman, this most likely happened after 1917 or so. And remember, Willie married Jessie in 1909. But anyway, as the story goes, while Willie was away at dinner with his former in-laws, it's said that Jessie discovered there was no food in the house for the family's own meal. Even our half-cousin says that she didn't know what to do. He too says that she went to my grandmother's house for help. And between y'all and me, if this is true, and her descendants swear by it, then I gotta wonder about Jessie's mental faculties. She goes to fix dinner, and only then does she realize there is no dinner to fix? I mean, most people are a little more observant than that. You know, if you're preparing meals regularly, then you should realize the lack of food long before dinner time. Now I'm starting to wonder, the way she treated her stepchildren, the way she had no idea the kitchen was understocked, even though she had prepared meals earlier that day, and the way in which all of her older children abandoned her when she was dying. Well, this all speaks volumes about her to me, and not necessarily in a good way. But you know, I'm starting to wonder if Jessie had some sort of brain function issues. And I don't mean like mentally retarded or anything like that. But I have to wonder if her brain was malfunctioning or something that turned her into such a cold and unfeeling bitch who was incapable of seeing the big picture. And you know, Willie mentioned that Dr. Landrum wasn't fit to take care of a horse nor a dog. Well, neither was Jessie. Thank goodness my grandfather came along and swept my grandmother off her feet, so she only had to spend a few years with that mean old bitch, because they married in January of 1916. So, you know, but really it's Aunt Sally and Aunt Allie that I really feel sorry for, especially Aunt Allie. And I know I don't have many nice things to say about her, but I do recognize the tough hand she was dealt in life. She was just about 2 when Lizzie, her mother, died, and around 14 when Jessie died. If you couple that with the idea that Jessie was the only mother Aunt Allie could ever remember, well, no wonder she turned into such a mean and selfish old lady. I'm sorry, but there it is. By the time I came along, Aunt Allie was a cold and unfeeling, selfish old biddy. My uncle, Lawrence Phillips, once told me that she'd been that way for as long as he could remember. But anyway, Jessie's got no food in the house to feed the kids, and there's a lot of them too. 4 of Willie and Lizzie's kids are still at home. Jessie brought 3 of her 4 children from her marriage to Mobley, and then she and Willie had another 3 collectively. I find it incredibly odd that Jessie had no idea how to feed herself and the children, nor can she come up with a plan. But that's the way the story goes. She went to my grandmother for help, a woman whom she's supposed to have helped raise. And she's got to ask her for advice on how to feed herself and the kids. And never y'all mind that Willie's off feasting with the Fullers, his former in-laws. This is what happens when you enter into a contract marriage, though. You get the security of a roof over your head and food in your belly most days. And Willie, well, he gets to keep on acting like he's a member of the Fuller family still. In Willie's defense, though, I suspect he thought that Jessie would be able to handle the preparations without needing him to organize it for her. She was a widow, after all, when they got married. So I'm not going to knock Willie for going off without her. Hey, for all we know, that might have been part of the contract that they drew up the day they met. She wanted security, and he wanted the freedom to remain an active part of the Fuller family without her. Sounds reasonable when you're talking about a contract marriage. So anyway, as the story goes, since Jessie didn't know what to do, she went to my grandparents' house. And she told Sissy what had happened. Apparently my grandmother got really mad at her father, saying, "I'm not going to let him get away with this." Apparently, y'all, my grandmother thought Willie was getting away with something by going over to her grandma's house and leaving everybody else to fend for themselves. But anyway, Jessie asked her, "What are you going to do?" And my grandmother says that that this is what she told her, and I can totally see her saying this too. She said that she told Jessie, "I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going up to Eris and buy you some groceries." And y'all, my grandma was one smart cookie. She knew her father had credit at the Eris commissary. So she put on a pair of trousers underneath her skirt, grabbed a cotton sack, and, with the help of her stepbrother Aubrey, she saddled a horse and headed to Eris. At the commissary, she filled the cotton sack with groceries and put it on her father's tab. They said it looked like enough food to last a week. Nevertheless, she delivered the food to her father's house and then proceeded to cook up a grand feast. It's said that when Willie came home around 5 p.m., he found the entire family eating high on the hog. When asked where the food came from, of course, Jessie threw my grandmother under the bus, saying, "Ask Sissy, she provided it. She went up to Eris and bought it on your credit." Turns out, and I'm sure to Jessie's dismay, that my great-grandfather ended up simply laughing at my grandmother's antics and asked for a plate. So, on December 13th, 1918, Redmond and Emma Thornell sold their adjoining property consisting of 100 acres and a log house to Willie for $175 when the Thornells moved to Ashdown, Arkansas. And just as an FYI, Emma was Emma Fuller, Lizzie's sister. And in 1919, Willie's mother, Julia Wheat Williams, became ill. Oh, bitch. It's said that Willie made several trips to Malvern, Arkansas prior to her death on August 8th, 1919. And this is going to bring us up to that. Remember that prophetic dream of Aunt Allie's that we talked about a few videos ago? Where her Aunt Callie and 2 small children in the community died. Well, that's where we are time-wise. And we're going to need a couple of videos to tell that story. So we'll close this video for now. But stay tuned, because in the next couple of videos, we're going to talk about Callie Fuller and those 2 small children in more detail. And the illness that befell Jessie right around that same time. So, until next time, later Gators.